All right, welcome to the how-to session on how to build your first client map. I think there's a right way and a wrong way to build a client map. So this is about reducing that barrier to entry and making it as easy as possible for you to get up to speed. There's lots of complexity, so we want to try and make this easier for you. Our agenda today is we're going to do the introduction. We're going to go through the foundations of different client types. We're going to understand how the different map types work across AccountKit, and then we're going to help you build your first map. We'll wrap it all on up. So in terms of the foundations, so we share a lot of data with the Xero Practice Manager. If you're not using Xero Practice Manager, then you know we've got client groups, clients, affiliates, and contacts. We do share client groups, clients, and contacts with XPM, but we do make the distinction with affiliates. So what is an affiliate? Well, as it says here, it's essentially anyone who is not a client. So that could be Australia Post, it could be a law firm, it could be a non-client property trust that a client is currently invested in. These are relationships we might want to establish within a structured diagram, but we don't want them to mess up our other client data. So otherwise, we can then link the affiliates back to our client groups within the client map. Now, contacts we also merge together, but that's something we take care of in another training session. So in terms of diagram types, so we've got current, proposed, and historical. So with current diagrams, if there are any changes to client data within Xero Practice Manager or AccountKit, it prompts to update the diagram upon open. So if I've made a change and we notice the change since the last time you opened the diagram, then we'll ask if you want us to update that. Whereas on a proposed historical diagram, we don't get prompted. This is just showing either a proposal for something in the future or something that's happened in the past. So we don't want to prompt for changes within those. So within the client map, any changes made within the client map in terms of relationships and maybe the name of the entity, that will flow back into the client and the XPM the client record direct from the client map. Whereas again, the proposed historicals do not flow back. Hence why it's really useful if I'm doing some proposed diagram with a restructure, I could take a copy of a current diagram, make it proposed, make all the changes I like in terms of new entities, changes to relationships, and know that won't flow back to XPM until such time as I change that proposed diagram to a current diagram. At that point, it will. Now there is a sandbox, and this is something totally different to the other ones. It's really like a back of napkin, rough and ready style diagram. Potentially when you don't have a client on your books yet, so you don't have all the data. You just want to do something really quickly, quick and dirty in a diagram because you want to talk about something with a potential client instead. You can also create some structured templates which you can quickly pull something together to save you setting it all up from scratch. There is no link to underlying client data though. Now, preparation really is key. You want to make sure your data is nice and squeaky clean. For the best part, you can do some provided within AccountKit within the client map itself. Otherwise, make sure that you've reviewed your practice settings. You want to make sure the entity types are all set up correctly. Now, most of the time they're going to be fine, but if you've set up your own custom entity types within Xero Practice Manager or even yourself within AccountKit, you want to go through and just make sure they're all set up correctly. I'll show you those in a moment. Check the default visuals. That's the sort of thing you might want to dive into when you feel a bit more confident because you can customize nearly anything there. Ensure your clients are all into groups. We rely heavily on everyone being in groups. You don't have to. You could add them one by one, but that's really sort of a time waste. Instead, make sure all your clients are in some sort of group. But let's build your first map. This is where it all happens. All right, so here we are within AccountKit. So we dive on into the Bull family group as a starting point. So we go through our search menu up the top here. And I'm going to go to the Bull family group. Really useful little search menu. I can do quick copies of ABNs, TFNs, and affiliates and contacts and business names within here. In this instance, I'm just going to go to the Bull family group. And in here, you can see all the entities within the group. So I can see the entity type, I can see a description that flows into the business structure diagram, and I can see all my integration pieces within here. So this is the key here. Like if it's not in here, then you know you need to update something. So if I now dive into one of those entities like Bull Antics, you can see Bull Antics is actually part of a number of groups. The group we're dealing with today is the Bull family group. You can set up as many groups as you like. That does push back into Xero Practice Manager. I want to add a new group, I can just type it in. I can connect to a different one, or I can add new groups directly from here as well. While I am in here, it's worth looking at down here. This is really useful. That's only my integrations. And if I've got CAS 360 or Now Infinity integrated, I can also quickly preview data direct from within their system. And this is really pertinent if I'm just going to check my relationships. Now, if I need to update things like my shareholders and directorships and so forth, or even comparing my addresses with what's in the other systems, whether it be CAS or whether it be Now Infinity, I can check those details here and update as required, or I can jump straight to the entity in Now Infinity or CAS 360 to do so. Now, if I jump back to the people list temporarily, now if you've got a bunch of clients that aren't in groups, the quickest way to go about doing so is probably to do a search for them. So in this case, if I just said it's going to be full, and then once that's filtered, I can then select a whole bunch of them. I can go to my actions list and I can bulk assign. And this enables me to bulk assign a whole bunch of entities to a group rather than doing it one by one through the top here. So I could just do it through here like this. All right, so we now got a good starting point in terms of all the entities in the right place. Let's temporarily dive on over into your practice settings as well. And let's have a look at your lists and tags. And the business types is the area that's most important initially. So these are all the entity types that have come through from Xero Practice Manager or that are already in here. And all we're doing here is making sure our ATO client types, whether they're an individual type, so maybe if you've got a sole trader type in here, we're going to flag them to make sure they're shown as an individual type here, that we need that within the client map. We go over to tool settings and defaults on the other hand. It's all rather overwhelming. There's lots of information. So in here, I can set some default colors. I can set the default style of map that you come into. And I can also choose a default theme. And these are all the themes underneath. We're currently in the classic theme where I'm setting the font color, header colors, border colors, in which case is none, and the shape. And alternatively, I can go and set the other settings. These are all the things like lines, font sizes, lots of flexibility if you want to dive into this sort of stuff and customize them to your heart's content that create consistency across all your diagrams. So you can create your own theme from here as well. Otherwise, you can just edit the ones that we've created for you. Okay, let's dive on over to the client map. And we're going to build our first diagram. So here you can see our current different types. We do explain underneath what each of these types do. We've already gone through that. Now you do get to choose also which other types of maps there are. This is mainly just a labeling exercise, so you can easily find something. Otherwise, in this case here, I'm going to do it for the Bull family group. And I'm just going to say, this is the business structure diagram. And I want to say as at 30 June 2020. And these fields here, you put whatever you like into them. This is what we like to put into ours. They appear at the top of the diagram. All right, so here we are into a nice blank canvas. All the entities from the family group are on the left-hand side here. But what I'm going to show you first is how to get to help. So at the top here in this question mark across every single tool is get help for this page. This takes you straight to the help center for this tool. Now what you'll find here is this overview. There'll be a new version of how to build your first client map at the top here. Otherwise, there are some examples if you want some exploration about what you could build. But otherwise, there's lots and lots of hints and tips about how you go about building things, what do the different icons mean, and so forth. So there's lots of information here for you to work through if you're not sure. Otherwise, you can just play around with it within the diagram itself. All right, close that one down, and let's go here. All right, so the way, let me go to full screen mode. That's what this icon here means. The old way of going about doing this was we'd go through and we'd add all these entities to the canvas like this. So I've just dropped them in by clicking on them, and we'd normally probably want to have a snap to, in this case, go snap to grid. And let's put that there, like that. Move these things around. I want these individuals to be part of a group. On the right-hand side, once you've got the entity selected, so I can just put them into a group. And it's a bit of a manual process. I can actually make another group if I want to. You'll note when I selected this over here, I actually have the option to create a new group. And that's really useful if I've got more than one family group and I want to have the individuals in different groups. In this case here, we'll just put them into the pre-defined group. And from here, we'd go about moving things around like this. Now, worth noting, if I hold down the Shift key and scroll the mouse wheel, it'll zoom out, or I can use the magnifying glass here and slide this up and down. Otherwise, spacebar, if you hold that down, you can also pan the screen around as well. And that's really relevant when you've got really big diagrams. So rest your fingers on the Shift and the spacebar, and then you better get around things much faster. So that's how you'd normally go about doing the diagram. You'd go through and you'd then do all the lines and the like. But rather than doing it that way, for this particular case, we're going to use the auto build feature instead. So this is going to get you at least part of the way there, depending on the complexity of the diagram. So where it's a really quite a simple diagram, it's some of those familiar structures we know about with the operating company and a trust that holds the shares in the company, and maybe a self-managed super fund on the side or a partnership. We recognize most of those structures and we'll put something together that's pretty close to the mark. So I'll show you how that looks here. Now I'm going to build the diagram. All right, that's a good start, but I actually want my individuals to be grouped together. So let's just do that again. All right, so now that there, I actually prefer that one to be over there. I'm going to grab the elbows for that and move that down there. All right, so you can see that's a much quicker proposition for building a diagram. And I can go through and do a whole bunch of tweaking to my heart's content from here as well. But what I'm also going to do is I'm going to delete it again. You've noticed there are some other options in here as well. So the layout entities is where you've got a larger group or a structure diagram that doesn't necessarily come together that simply with a bit ordinary auto build. This is a big groups usually. And so the better option here is to go, okay, I'm going to lay out the entities like this. And then from there, you move them around to where you want them to be. So if I now zoom out, I'm imagining it's quite a big diagram. I'm shuffling things all over the place until I've got them exactly where I want them to be. And it's only once you're happy with them. Let's get that in the center. You say, okay, happy with the layout. It's at that point then you can add the relationship lines. So you've got a couple of options about how you go about doing it. You can do it one way or the other. If you find the auto build doesn't behave for you, then it's worth actually then diving in and having another go with the layout instead. All right, so let me hit save on that. Got a good starting point now. All right, so there are heaps of visuals we can change about this. And this is where a lot of the complexity comes into, and it does depend on the audience that you're presenting this to. So up along the top here, the general options affect all the visuals of all the entities, whereas the line options affects all the lines of the diagram. The only time it gets more specific than that is when I select an object, and then you can see I can change the individual items around an object or a line and the various other bits and pieces that we're going to select in just a moment. So in this case here, if I go through this really quickly, our general options, I can change my theme from here. So if I want to go to that other theme, so we'll go through and update the diagram to the other theme. You see it looks quite substantially different. I actually prefer the other. We're going to change that back. And I can go through and say, depending on the audience, what information do I want to show? Maybe the entity type is more relevant to our clients, and maybe the ACN is not so relevant. So you can see here, depending on the audience, I'm just showing different information to our clients. And this is all about heights, widths, default colors, thickness of lines. If I go to this side, again, we want text to wrap, various colors once again, and same for all those different pieces. And maybe I don't want that center line to be exactly there. I want to move them over. That's not too ideal either. But I can tell it to wrap. And similarly so for the footer. Now, every single one of these I can also hide and show. That's what this icon here is for, being able to hide and show that information. Otherwise, if I get the real tiz and make a bit of a mess and I need to get things back to default, this little icon, you'll see this exists across most of the options along the top. So I can reset to the practice defaults simply by hitting that button, and that'll return everything back to normal. All right, similarly so for lines, again, I can go in here, and if I'm not sure about these things, I can start to play with them. And these are sort of things you play to your heart's content, so you find the stuff that resonates with you. But again, we can just reset those also back to our practice defaults from here. Oops, move my line. Excellent. All right. Now, let me consult my notes. Now, all right, so I'm actually realized I've missed something from this diagram. So maybe we've got a unlisted property trust, like we talked about before, an affiliate who doesn't actually form part of the family group. And this is where I can come up to the top here and say, I want to add an entity. And what we're going to do is we're going to look for that entity. And if it exists, I'm going to type nothing. If it doesn't exist, it'll add it as a new client or affiliate. You'll get a choice for that in a second. Otherwise, it's going to look everywhere. And if I scroll down a little bit, you'll see we've got, where is it? Bullhorns, there it is. That's an affiliate. So if I go add from here, it's now taking that from our affiliates and it's going to bring it into this diagram. Now we put it over there. It's not very useful. Okay, so now I've got my Bullhorns unit trust. I want to include that in the diagram. I actually think that'd probably be more useful up here. And I'm just going to do a quick line between those two. It's kind of stupid. Now, clearly I'm missing a relationship within here as well. So what we're going to do then is I could add the relationship directly within here. So I can select the entity. And on the right-hand side, you can see there are all the specific details about that particular entity, including the description as well. So I could go in here and say, I want to add a unit holder relationship, and I'm going to add 100 units. That's going to be to the Bull Super Fund, which my relationship is unit holder of. That's good. I could add it from here. I could change the direction of the relationship as well if I've got it wrong. And worth noting here, where we're doing a relationship to a client, it would push that back as a beneficiary in XPM as opposed to a unit holder, which doesn't exist obviously in XPM. I'm not going to do it from here. I'm going to hit save on that, and we're going to go somewhere else and show you how we're going to do that elsewhere. So we're going to go over into the Bullhorns unit trust. So let me select that entity again. This name up the top here is a hot link to the client. So I can actually just select that in theory. Let me try this one instead. There we go. It's busy loading something. And this is not the entity I want, so I'm actually going to change entities because it's not going to show up. We're going to go this way because it's not a client. All right, Bullhorns unit trust. All right, so once again, you can see in the relationship here, it's missing. So I'm going to add the relationship from here instead. We've got a unit holder. It's to the Bull Super Fund. It's 100 units. Bull Super Fund is unit holder of. That's good. And I'm going to save that. All right, so that in theory is actually added it. I don't necessarily have to hit save when I'm adding a relationship. When I come back over to here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop out of full screen mode, and I'm just going to look at this and say, I'm going to check for any client changes. Now, this will normally happen when you load a diagram anyway, so I could just hit F5 to reload the page. In this case here, I'm just going to check for changes, and straight away it's gone, yep, there's a new relationship here. I actually want to add this one to the current diagram, so you can just select it and accept it. And that's going to make a quick save. It's going to incorporate that change into the data in the background. So let's go back to full screen. You can see now, there's our unit holder relationship has now appeared. It's also now appeared over here as well. So you've got a bit of flexibility about how you go about doing that. You don't just have to do it through the client details. You can do it from within the client diagram itself. Okay, so now we've got this diagram placed. Maybe there's some other information you want to communicate with your clients. No, because maybe it's a proposal. So up the top here, you'll note that we've got a few things. We've got some icons we can utilize, and we've also got various shapes and other bits and pieces. In this case, I'm just going to add a box, and I'm going to double click on it. You can do that with all the entities. You can double click on them, and I'm going to add the first bit, and it's going to say rent paid. All right. don't like the colors. I'm actually going to add a custom color just for this map. I want a nice bright orange. Let's just add it to my customs. And I'm actually going to go over here as well. I'm going to use it again. I'm going to round off the edges, thicken up the borders. The rest of that's fine. I'd like that to be a little bit bigger. And I also want to have nice thick. So now that you've got some basic details in place, I can obviously resize that as well. All right. So what I can do now is I'm going to grab another shape. And I'm going to put that over there for now. And this one here is going to be pension payment. And I'm going to take that one and I'm going to use the special copy formatting tool up here. I'm going to apply it to that. Now, obviously the shape of that's not exactly ideal, so we want to make it a little bit bigger. But all the other details I've now copied. That's really, really helpful. I can also take something like this, actually maybe this one first, and I'm going to copy and paste. It's just a normal Control-C, Control-V, and this one's going to be our capital contributed. Make that a little bit bigger. Now, before I go on to moving them into the right place and placing them, I'm going to show you something else that's also really helpful. I'm going to copy these. And you can do this with any entity you like. But see how they're not even remotely lined up. I could be using any of these snap to objects. I could be using these. The alternative is I've got these alignment options as well. So what I can do here is I can select all these objects and say they're not lined up properly. So I can align them up this way. Or I could line up to your left and the like. So you've got a few options around how these things work, whether you want to do all those bits and pieces. Now, there's also some other options. If you hover over any of these, you'll notice, well, there's some keyboard shortcuts, sending forward, sending backwards, grouping and ungrouping. By having these things grouped and so forth, then what happens is we end up with the ability to manipulate these in an awesome way. Now, the other cool one as well is you can also use these too. So this is distribute horizontally and distribute vertically. So it gets your spacing exactly right in the vertical or horizontal. So there's no excuse for not having nice, tidy diagrams. All right, let me clear those. Actually, let me clear all. I'm going to need one of those. Clear that one. Get rid of the layout options. All right, so I'm going to have my rent paid up here. It's not very good sizing, so let me just make that a little bit bigger. Set up. And I want my pension payments. They're going to be coming from a super fund. I have to copy that before. Didn't even realize. And I'm going to have this. Let me zoom out a little bit. And put that into the right place. So step number one. Now I'm going to add some lines in. This is going to be, oops, having problems with my own dragging. What we're describing here is cash flow. And I want cash flow to look different to ownership. All right, they've all been built. And now on this one here, I want cash flow similar to these other icons here. I want them to be represented by the same sorts of details. So I want that to be orange. Also, I want that to be orange as well. And I also want the visuals to be different. So that's actually going to be this, and that's going to be like that. And I also want it to be dashed and a little bit thicker. So you can spend a lot of time running around manipulating this data, but only do it for the first one, because what you want to do next is then copy formatting for each of those. Now, if you ever find yourself inside a tool or something and you can't get out of it, hit the escape key. That'll drop you out of the copy cloning tool. It'll also, if you accidentally click on one of these, you end up with this weird flashing thing like this. That's just a line tool. So you can, in theory, just click on one of these other objects here, and it'll do lines for you. But if you didn't mean to do it, and it's really easy to select them by accident, just hit the escape key. That drops you back out. All right, so we've got a nice looking diagram. There is lots of other flexibility around these line types as well, by the way. This just happens to be called the elbow style. I can also do a flexible style. The flexible style, once it's done, you see these new little dots appear. And when I hit that dot, I can then add in other anchor points. And I can really make these lines move wherever I like. If I want to get rid of them, then you double click where the white dots are to get rid of them. Alternative to that, you can also do a straight line, or you can change it over to a curved line as well. So you've got a few different options about how you might want to do that. But otherwise, that is how you build your diagram. So I'm just going to hit save on that. Now, worth noting when we're saving, you'll note that before it's often changed to black and white as well. So what we're doing here is we're creating a couple of different versions. We're creating a black and white version and a colored version. We're creating a graphics file, and let's see, the text is gone. And we've also created the colorable PNG as well. Now, if I go into somewhere like a history, what you're seeing in here is all the different saves and so forth. So every time I make changes, it's continuously making saves along the way. And if I click on this, I can actually see a low-res version of what we've been working on. So if you had a crash of the browser or something went a bit haywire, you can always go back and restore a prior one, or you can even copy an old one to a brand new diagram or delete from history. But every time I hit a manual save button, it also then whacks them into here as well. So if I want to say, okay, I want to restore this as a current diagram, then you have that option to go back. So you should never, ever go back. Now, I see how you have to apologize. It looks like some text has disappeared. That's actually just a known bug, which we will get resolved in just a moment. All right, so if we look at the outputs then, if I go here, I can do the PDF, PNG from here. So, and also landscape portrait, and whether we display the map name and map description, you can output that PDF. You see those amounts have come back. That's all in your own branding and logos and so forth. And the alternative is, like I say, I actually want a PNG instead. And there's your PNG. Now I can right click on that, save it as an image, use it within a PowerPoint presentation, Word document, you name it. You've got a few options about how you might want to do that. All right, failing that, let me drop back out of full screen mode temporarily. I'm going to go back to my list. You don't have to go into a diagram. You can just go to last updated, and then here, I can also output it direct from this list page as well. I don't have to do it from within the diagram itself. So they're all bits and pieces on how to build your first diagram. Lots in there, so make sure you go back and watch the bits and pieces over again. While you are in there playing with it, there is other things you can do. I'm just going to show you a couple of other examples. So this is an example of a property syndication that we've done, utilizing a few of the icons. I should have shown the icons to you. So up here, maybe we want to show something as cute as a sheep. Maybe it's time for our retirement. So we're going to toast to that with a champagne. And all these things are also editable as well. Sizes, colors, and everything else. Otherwise, this is an example of a much more detailed structure with lots of entities in the group. You'll see we've collapsed the body and the footer, so we're only showing the high level stuff. And if we zoom on in, you can see a lot more detail. So I don't think the auto build would cope with that, but you get the idea of the type of things you can build. You can also build things like process maps. That's just using the icons and boxes and so forth to achieve that, or business hierarchies, or even a software map. Now, if you can't find a particular item in here, some things you have to actually search for. So if you go, I want to see the Xero logos, then that will show up anything related to Xero in there, for example. So if it's not something there, we can always try and source an SVG file that we can use to build these diagrams as well. Okay, so that is how to build your first client map. So let me dive back over into our slides. So this video is obviously going to be accessible within the within our main website. We can also find it in the help file for the client map. Otherwise, please do reach out if you've got any questions or if you've hit any bugs along the way. You send it to support@account-kit.com. That hits our Slack channel, and we'll be in contact in no time at all. Otherwise, thanks for your time, and I look forward to seeing some of your creations over the years to come. Cheers.